Hey Tony, it is Thursday, and I have a different video today. Normally we talk about like how our days have been and stuff, but I have a different video today that I kind of want to do. It's all because of this. Taylor and I went to Best Buy and we picked up Rogue One. Hallelujah. When I was talking to Taylor about it yesterday, because we're obviously both on a Mass Effect kick, and we started talking about like a moral relativity and things such as that. So I thought of a really interesting video. We're going to discuss the morality of Rogue One. Now, Rogue One, despite the fact it got somewhat mixed reviews, I loved it. I thought it was a great movie. It was everything I wanted in a Star Wars film, and it was brilliant. And the more I got to think about it, and I realized the reason why I like it so much is because, yes, there are still good guys, yes, there are still bad guys, but there's so much more relative, because I think the best example is when you obviously have Jen and Cassian are having the issue after, spoilers, her dad dies. And she's basically just like, if you're following orders, you're no better than a stormtrooper. And then Cassian was just like, I followed my duty, and I disobeyed my orders. I didn't kill him, but I disobeyed orders and put us all at risk because of it. And I thought that was interesting. And also, like, the very first scene when you first see Cassian, and he basically, he's about to get taken captive by the stormtroopers, and he shoots his informant in order to make sure he can't, give any information out. I loved that. That's something that I thought Star Wars has needed for a very long time, because too much of Star Wars is light versus dark, good versus evil. And Rogue One completely turned that on its head, because there are good people in the Empire, much like there are not so good people in the Rebellion. And I really like that. It's the very dark, gritty ideas behind it. I always found really, really enjoyable. And like to talk about a couple of the characters. Obviously, the director is evil because he wants to blow up the planet for the Empire. But you think that a lot of the reason why he's wanting to do this is because he really believes in the Empire and he believes in what they stand for. Then you have Jen's father, who is, by all intents and purposes, arguably the most good person inside the entire movie. And he himself was the one who designed the Death Star, basically. In which I always really liked that, because he personally, because he saw just the terrible destructive power that the Death Star had, he decided to put the reactor issue there. He put the weak point. And that is just very different. You have Saul Guerrero, who is by all intents and purposes a terrorist on that planet. I can't remember what their planet's called. I have a lot of Mass Effect planets swirling throughout my head, so I don't remember all the planets. But you have the example of Saul Guerrero, who very much so is an extremist who even the Rebellion doesn't even like, because they think he is more of a detriment to the Rebellion than a benefit. And then that also, when you first meet Jyn as she's an adult, she's a prisoner. So you have to assume that she did at least something wrong, something that's against the law to put her in there. And it was Cassian and the other Rebellion forces who saved her from the clutches. And all of that really, I think, flows into a very, very, very interesting setup in which, I guess, Brody, the pilot, is also another character who is, by all intents and purposes, a good character, but did these terrible things and saw just the evil that the Empire was doing, but still stuck with him until he finally decided not to, with the help of Jin's father. Which, that's something you've never really seen that in Star Wars films before, because it's always the Jedi are good, the Sith are evil. Now, the expanded universe and such really changes that up, in which there is a lot less good and a lot less evil, and it's all just different shades of gray. But I thought Rogue One really did a great job on setting that up. And so it kind of sets up the interesting question of what is moral, what is right, what is wrong in the Star Wars universe. Because just before the final climactic battle scene, when Jyn and their small tight strike team end up going to Scarif, Cassian even mentions that they are saboteurs, assassins, spies, and things such as that. In other words, not your glamorous positions, not your quote-unquote good positions, because they're the people who they can do just as many evil things as the Empire does. And that sets up a very different look at the universe. I mean, it's a very dark, grittier film, which is great, and I think is what Star Wars needed. But it also just gives you so many interesting questions on what is good and evil in the Star Wars universe. Because you see us, we're always rooting for the heroes of Rogue One. We're rooting for Jyn, Cassian, Chowett, Brody, and K2. And I cannot remember what the heavy weapons guy is. I can't remember his name. But you're rooting for them. But at the same point, you know that they're not good people. I mean, Jin's a criminal. The monk's a good person, but his bodyguard is really not. He's just a paid merc. He'll shoot on whoever needs shooting, as long as you pay him enough. Brody was obviously a member of the Empire, as was K2. K2 has, the darkest sense of humor, in which he's basically just like, I don't think we should give Jyn a gun, because the chances. You want to know what the chances are that she's going to use it on us? High, very high. But you see, even K2 is kind of not wanting people, doesn't trust Jyn, doesn't want her to have the ability to shoot upon them. And that's something that you've never seen that in one of the Star Wars movies before, because they're too set on the duality of light and dark. And this is the first movie that really changed that up, and it really shows that Star Wars has a much deeper universe than a lot of people give it credit for. And that's something that I think more people should need. And that's why, me, obviously being a huge Star Wars fan, if you haven't gathered, Tony, which you lived with me for 18 years, so I'm sure I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan. But it's something that I've always had issues with the movies for, because it's too much of a duality. Whereas Rogue One changed that completely, and that's why I think it was one of my favorite. It's not my favorite Star Wars movie, but it's one of my favorite Star Wars movies, because it's so different. It was a much needed change. But I think that it gives a very good a really good moment to just sit down and talk about what is moral, what is good, what is ethical, even in the Star Wars universe. And that's something that I think more fictional universes can use. Tony, I'll see you on Tuesday.